Dragonhead is the name Chinese gangsters give to their godfathers, their bosses of bosses. And U.S. law enforcement agencies report that Asian gangsters are second only to the Italian Mafia, La Cosa Nostra, when it comes to power and importance. That's why more than 1,000 cops from 26 countries met in Las Vegas not long ago to plot strategy and to exchange information about how to deal with this new threat. It won't be easy. The power of Asian organized crime is based in part on a long tradition of secret criminal fraternities known as Triads. And according to the FBI, members of at least one of those triads, the Wo Hop To, are now operating in this country. This is Wan Chai, the Hong Kong nightclub district that was made famous decades ago in the novel The World of Susie Wong. It's still a favorite with sailors on shore leave, and it is also the home turf of the Wo Hop To Triad, a criminal gang with about 2,000 members. That may sound like a lot, but by Hong Kong standards, it's small potatoes. Police put the membership of one of the largest triads at more than 35,000. In Hong Kong, the triad societies extort the city's street vendors and merchants. In some areas of overcrowded Hong Kong, they control the availability of scarce housing. They control parts of the public transportation system by extorting fees from these privately operated buses in exchange for permission to drive down Hong Kong streets. And triad members own foreign money exchange companies, control law firms and politicians, and are a power in Hong Kong's booming entertainment and film industry. In fact, last year, there was a massive public protest against triad influence over Hong Kong's motion picture industry. According to the Royal Hong Kong Police, there are 15 active triad societies, all secret.
If anyone to be a member of the triad is illegal in Hong Kong, the sentence is very serious.
The triads began more than 200 years ago as patriotic organizations on mainland China, then degenerated into criminal gangs.
All these groups follow the triad rituals. Whenever they want to be a member, they have to go through the triad rituals.
Until last year, Stephen Vickers was Chief of Criminal Intelligence for the Royal Hong Kong Police.
I have to say that triads are an essential part of the fabric of Hong Kong society, and sadly, we, as a member of the community of Hong Kong, I think we lack the will to take them on head-on.
Today, Vickers, who now runs Asia operations for an international private investigation firm, is considered an expert on triads.
One key factor to triads organized crime is gambling. Chinese people love to gamble, it's a fact. Gambling is a major money earner. It generates huge volumes of money, and the triads benefit from that.
In Hong Kong, the money involved in gambling is phenomenal. And illegal gambling on horses, as well as betting on legal and illegal Chinese games of chance, are a basic triad industry. The Royal Hong Kong Police told us that this legal mahjong gaming parlor we visited with an undercover camera is controlled by the Wo Hop To Triad. But if gambling is a basic triad industry, drugs are a staple. U.S. authorities have seized hundreds of kilos of heroin smuggled into America by the Chinese mob, which has replaced the Mafia, La Cosa Nostra, in the drug trade.
Ethnic Chinese now control about 56 or 58% of the domestic U.S. heroin market.
Richard Lamagna is the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's narcotics attaché in Hong Kong. And Richard Lamagna says that the triads play a special role in the heroin business.
The heroin business and the drug business is controlled by independent entrepreneurs who may draw upon their associations with the triads for talent. It's a talent pool.
And members of the triad talent pool and their associates are turning up all over the world involved in executions and extortion. An undercover camera in a Chinatown in Great Britain recorded this savage beating of a man who dared open a video rental shop without the permission of the local Chinese mob. One of the favorite travel destinations of the alleged organized crime figures we talked to is mainland China, where they're investing money and making contacts. Capitalism is flourishing in South China, and so is crime.
According to high-level government sources, the Triads already have plenty of friends in Communist China's security forces who help them smuggle everything from cars to VCRs across the border. And intelligence agencies here in Hong Kong say they've already observed high-level meetings between Triad leaders and Chinese government officials. In fact, last year, one high-ranking Chinese official seemed to be praising the Triads in a public statement when he referred to them as patriotic organizations.
Like organized crime in the United States, the Triads are involved in vice, drugs, and violence. We asked Stephen Vickers how Triads are different from La Cosa Nostra, the Mafia.
The key and core difference between the Mafia and Triads is the chap in charge of the society is not necessarily exercising control over the activities of the members of that society.
You make it sound sort of like a fraternity of criminals.
It's a good way to describe it.
So why should we care about a criminal fraternity in Hong Kong? Last year, U.S. law enforcement reported to a Senate investigating committee that for the first time, they had direct links between the Chinese organized criminals in this country and a Chinese organized crime group in Hong Kong. And one of those links was this man, Peter Chong.
And how are you employed?
Take my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Peter Chong is an alleged heavyweight in the Wo Hop To Triad, and his presence in San Francisco's Chinatown became the major concern of this man, Tony Lau, a special agent of the FBI in San Francisco and an expert on Asian organized crime. Lau was assigned to investigate Peter Chong and the Wo Hop To Triad.
What was your reaction the first time you heard the Wo Hop To being mentioned on the streets of San Francisco?
My reaction when I first heard of the Wo Hop To is that the Triads are coming.
How serious a problem were you talking about?
When you have heroin trafficking, when you have loan sharking, gambling, extortion, when you have kidnapping, you got a big problem.
And that makes it more important or more significant than the Bloods and the Crips in Los Angeles?
We're not talking about kids shooting on the street. We're talking about people with links all over the world.
Tony Lau's investigation revealed that Peter Chong was meeting regularly with drug traffickers, gamblers, enforcers, and acting as a mediator at mob sit-downs.
We have sources telling us that the reason for his coming out to be the mediator was eventually for him to consolidate all the factions of the Chinese criminals in Chinatown under the Wo Hop To umbrella.
And Tony Lau's investigation also revealed that Peter Chong was exercising control over hundreds of youth gang members in the San Francisco Bay Area.
How powerful and influential was Peter Chong in the Chinese community here?
At the peak of his regime, he was in total control.
Of the criminal activity?
Of the group in Chinatown who are criminals or gang members.
In Chinatowns across the country, like this one in New York City, when merchants pay protection money, it's usually the local street gangs who are collecting for the neighborhood organized crime group. But according to the FBI in San Francisco's Chinatown, protection money was paid to street gangsters who said they were collecting for Peter Chong's Hong Kong Triad.
When you have young men who are provided with guns and are willing to kill for you, then you have the power, and the merchants will be afraid of you.
And Peter Chong had that kind of control?
Exactly.
And when a gang war erupted in San Francisco and 5 gangsters were murdered, Peter Chong was right in the middle. Chong provided food, shelter, and bulletproof vests for his Wo Hop To troops. And Tony Lau says that fear in the Chinese community got in the way of his investigation.
It's very difficult to get informants.
Because people are afraid.
People are afraid to talk.
And they have long memories.
And they have long memories. 君子報仇10年未晚. That is an old Chinese proverb.
And it means?
It means that for a gentleman to take his revenge, even if it takes 10 years, it is not considered to be too late.
And this gentleman, Chan Tai, known as Crazy Tai according to the Hong Kong police, is the dragon head of the Wo Hop To Triad. And when Peter Chong played host at his San Francisco home to Crazy Tai, Tony Lau's concern grew.
What do you mean dragon head?
He is the #1 leader of the Wo Hop To family.
The boss of bosses.
Exactly. We don't usually see dragon heads coming to the United States. And here we have a man who has for a long time known to be a dragonhead of the Triad organization, coming to the United States in the company of his #1 lieutenant, driving down to Los Angeles, back and forth, meeting with people that we suspected are organized crime people down there.
The FBI bugged the Wo Hop-to's phones, and San Francisco police and federal authorities arrested more than a dozen of Peter Chong's Wo Hop-to followers for loan sharking, drug dealing, murder for hire, and running a house of prostitution. Peter Chong, fearing indictment, decided to head to his hometown, the Triad's home turf, Hong Kong.
Did you like it?
My family loves him a lot. We get used to it.
Why did you have to leave?
I have some reason to leave.
At first, Peter Chong talked freely, denying that he was a Hong Kong Triad boss and that he was involved in any criminal activity while he was living in the United States. But when it came time to talk on camera, he read from a prepared text.
I know a lot of people in Chinatown, including businessmen and some people who have trouble with the law. I have tried to be a peacemaker, and I always tell the kids not to commit crime.
I'm sure that he was a peacekeeper for the purpose of making sure that he maintains the peace so that he could consolidate all the gang members.
Chong insists that he came to America to invest his money and retire.
I came to America just like the other immigrants to give my kids better educations and better freestyle life.
Once perhaps you are a Triad member, can you ever retire from a Triad organization? I don't think so.
The law enforcement thing that I'm involved with the Chinese organized crime involved is because many years ago I'm running an illegal gambling house in Hong Kong.
And who is the man who owned that illegal gambling house that Peter Chong managed? Crazy Ty, the Dragonhead, who visited Peter Chong in California.
I have nothing to hide. Don't be afraid. Ask anything you want.
The United States government reported that you were the dragonhead of a triad called Wo Hop-to.
I could laugh at that.
You've never been involved with them at all?
At one time, about 20 years ago, yes.
How long were you involved with them?
Quite a long time.
Crazy Ty insists that's all in the past. He told us that today he's a legitimate businessman and that he owns saunas, massage parlors, restaurants, and has major investments on mainland China. He denies that he went to the United States to oversee Peter Chong's operation. So why did he visit Peter Chong?
My daughter went to America to study, and of course, I don't speak English, and I don't have any friends in America, and he, Peter, was a guy who could show me around.
All criminals would claim to be businessmen, and they all have daughters, and they all wish their daughters to be good, successful students in U.S. universities.
And then we asked Crazy Ty how he knew Peter Chong.
He was my follower, worker, and he worked for me, basically.
In what business?
About 20 years ago, I was involved in illegal gambling casinos.
So he worked for you in your gambling operation?
He worked for me for 10 years, but he was sort of small fry then, not as notorious as he is today. I told him that's not a good idea, being a famous, notorious guy.
Meanwhile, Crazy Ty and Peter Chong are in Hong Kong doing business as usual. Peter Chong told us he'd like to return to the United States, and he may get his wish. A federal grand jury is currently considering indicting him and the Wo Hop-to associates he left behind in the United States for everything from conspiracy to commit murder to loan sharking. And then, U.S. authorities are expected to try and have Peter Chong return to the United States to stand trial.
Law enforcement agencies aren't the only ones plotting strategy. More than 500 Asian gangsters from Hong Kong and Japan met in Taiwan earlier this month for the funeral of a Chinese gang leader. They used the occasion to renew old acquaintances and to plan for the future, which is looking rosy. Any concern that the Triads might have had about being driven out of Hong Kong when the mainland Chinese take it over in 1997 seemed to have gone away. Communist China's top cop, the Minister of Security, is once again referring to the Triads as patriotic organizations. So patriotic that when China's top leaders traveled abroad, those patriotic Chinese mobsters provided security free of charge.